mean, there's just no corroboration whatsoever.
So if you have someone that's coming up to you and threatening to assault you, right? Is that a crime?
Well, yes, but that's not the same.
There you go.
Well, no, that's not the same thing, Judge, because I can walk up to somebody and say, hey, would you like to fight? And that's different. That's not threatening
But
to
you
assault.
have to take the circumstances into account. There's a totality here. You
Well,
can't just take the statement in and of itself. The person's having a mental health episode.
Sure.
They're irate, right? You don't know what they're capable. You've never met them before.
Sure.
If I know you and you ask me to fight, that's a different question.
Well, but I don't know.
Versus I've never met him.
Turns on.
He's got warrants. He may have a freaking murder warrant out.
Sure.
Court Uncut, what the people want. In today's hearing, we have a man that called officers to his house telling them that he had multiple warrants. Once the officers arrived, he ran out the front door and tried fighting them. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss crazy courtroom moments like this one.
Are you ready?
Well, that wasn't confusing at all.
You know, anytime you get stuff where there's in county versus out of state, it just,
No, it's all.
there's just so many rules that just kind of
And Judge, I'm
clear as mud.
No, I know. I've seen those issues and have dealt with just enough to know I don't enjoy them.
Is our guy on docket today?
No, well, he's on docket, but he's here present in court. He made bond, so that, I guess that gets rid of the issue about having to.
Come on up.
BVR.
Last name again is?
Gomez, and it's Matthew Gomez. You may have a couple on the docket. And did invite us to rehear PC this morning. The case I know is 183 days old. I have talked with the state. They're still trying to work with felony to see if they would approve him to do a mental health PTI, which we thought was appropriate.
Mental health in the case upstairs or
Here.
our case?
Yes.
Are you ready for a PC? Blaze?
So, Your Honor, I think Barnes was reading of it. I didn't know if you want the actual officer here or not.
No. This is just cursory, but I want to know if you're ready for any arguments or whatnot. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're not addressing the new one whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, that's
Totally got it.
tell me, go for it. Alex, please.
On August 25th, 2024, the officer was dispatched to a complaint unknown call at Harris County, Texas, with the call slip stating the following. The caller was rambling and refused to answer questions. The caller advised he has warrants for arrest and wants police to pick him up before he does something. The caller states he will be waiting outside the location for police. The caller was irate and upset. The caller was making threats towards police, stating they better be strong because he was going to fight and don't dispatch female officers. The officer arrived on scene and immediately noticed the defendant coming out of his house in an aggressive manner. The defendant took off his shirt and hat and was coming towards the officer quickly and was trying to get the officer to physically fight him. The defendant repeatedly stated he wanted the officer to fight him, and the officers immediately drew their tasers and began giving the defendant verbal commands. The defendant repeatedly refused to comply with the verbal commands and continued telling the officer and his partner to put their tasers away so they could fight him. The officer took the defendant to the ground by tackling him and used force to put the defendant's hands behind his back. The defendant was physically resisting and yelling the entire time. The officer then got the defendant into handcuffs and moved him to the side of the patrol vehicle. The officer's partner held the defendant against the vehicle while the officer conducted a search. The defendant was still refusing to comply with verbal commands and was physically resisting. The officer then assisted the defendant into the patrol vehicle using the minimal amount of force necessary, and the defendant was kicking the officer's legs and still refusing to comply.
Did they find anything? You said they searched, but they didn't find anything?
There's no notes, no finding anything. They're completing the search, and they only know that they arrested him on the warrants as well as the additional resistance charge.
What warrant did he have?
He had municipal.
I'll give you a second. I'll
Municipal
give you
warrants,
time.
Your Honor.
Just municipal?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, but I think a couple things are, and I know that's the DA's summary of the longer dims. And the longer dims notes reflect that when the officers got to the scene where they had been asked to come out and make an arrest and or been asked to come out and told there's warrants, but they get there and they don't have a chance to confirm anything or find out who he is or any of that stuff. But what's written in their longer dims report, the officers write down, he asked us to put our tasers away and fight him. And so it says in there that the officers made the decision to put their tasers away and go hands-on with him. And so that is
You're saying, you're telling me that they agreed to fight him?
It's what they wrote.
Can you imagine how much possible trouble they would get if they would agree to something like that?
And I don't think that it's agree to fight him in the sense that, I'm not saying the officers did anything wrong whatsoever. I'm saying when you arrive on the scene and somebody says, I have warrants, we know that's not enough as a legal matter to make an arrest. I could walk up and say, I've got warrants to our deputy. I can't be arrested for that. Maybe he can go back and find out more information, but that's
Sure.
not enough.
I think that that's reasonable.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the conduct is not that he comes up and starts fighting with the officers, but invites them to engage in physical contact. And I give them credit for putting their tasers away like he requested, but they, right in there, we did exactly what he said. We put our tasers away and then decided to go hands-on with the suspect. It's 2-on-1.
But I don't think the reasonable interpretation would be that they are agreeing to fight.
Well,
I don't think that that's reasonable because I can't imagine how much trouble they would get in, you know? They'd be fired.
to me, it's not about whether no one over here, and I don't think the state is either, is saying that the officers did anything wrong. I think we're assessing his conduct, and he has the right, as does anybody, it's just First Amendment protected speech, to invite someone to engage in physical conduct. And if they do, that's not him resisting arrest. And I don't really even think that that's the basis of the charge. They can't even arrest him because there's nothing to arrest him for at that moment. If you ran his name and found out the warrants and found out he did have active warrants, you could arrest him. But there's nothing for them to even arrest him for at that moment. And just walking up and saying, hey, I want to fight you, that's not enough to be placed under arrest. But what happens is they get him and get control of him and then start searching him, but pursuant to what? I mean, there's nothing, they still haven't verified him.
No, I think that it's so difficult to be a police officer nowadays, you know?
I understand.
A fine line that you have to walk between because of social media,
Sure.
because of cameras, because of just the way that the public policy and people come down on officers and how they react to situations and how they can get in trouble themselves. That if you see a person who's not acting normal, they're having like a mental health episode, how do you quell that down? Do you tase them? Because we know that we've got situations where officers go rogue and they just start kill them.
No, well, we've seen it too many times. And
it sucks. It's sad, but
I'm not criticizing the officers one bit about that. If it's the case that he tells them, when you get here, I want to fight. And when they get there, he says, I want to fight. And put your tasers up and fight me. And they put their tasers up and decide to go hands-on with him. I respect them for having done it.
I would like to know, because I'm not prepared to roll on this. What I would like to know is, what is the policy of the department when you have a person who's having a mental health episode? How do you handle that? Do you arrest them as like a community caretaking, right? Because in an effort to prevent them from hurting themselves or hurting another person, do you arrest them, right? Or what do you do? Because I don't know. So, because that's what's happening here. We have someone clearly who's having a mental health episode.
And you see why I thought mental health PTI is the appropriate route.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So, and I don't mind being patient while you think about that, and I go back
I'd
and.
like to know what the officer's mindset, number one, at the time of when this episode is happening. Number two, what is the policy when you have this kind of thing happening? What do you do? I don't know. You know,
Sure.
do you arrest them in an effort to prevent them from hurting themselves? Because who's to say they might have a gun that you don't know about that's stuck right here that they're just gonna start shooting?
Well, but I do think that it doesn't mean that he has done something legally wrong to elicit the words, this is what I'd like to do, and wait. It'd be one thing if he comes and starts attacking them, but to say, put your tasers up and fight me, and they say, taser up. We go hands on. Hands on for what?
I think that was extremely brave of the
Well,
officers.
and I'm-
I, you know, I give them so much credit because, I mean, who's to say that he doesn't have a gun behind his back and they
Well-
just don't know? And they're trusting him that he's going to act honorably and not take a gun from behind and kill him.
That's what they said, Your Honor. They actually used less force than
Yeah,
would have been.
really.
allowed.
God, that was freaking awesome.
Again, this is not criticism whatsoever.
Yeah, I understand.
But
I
the
understand.
question is, what legally did he do wrong in that moment? One, to support a detention, two, to allow for an arrest. And I don't know that there's enough for that. Or either one of those. It may be enough to, I mean, I don't know if I walked up to our bailiff and said I have warrants, if that's enough for him to even detain me. I mean, there's just no corroboration whatsoever.
So if you have someone that's coming up to you and threatening to assault you, right?
That's-
Is that a
Well,
crime?
well, yes, but that's not the
There
same.
you go.
Well, no, that's not the same thing, Judge, because I can walk up to somebody and say, hey, would you like to fight? And that's different. That's not threatening
But
to
you
assault.
have to take the circumstances into account. There's a totality here. You
Well,
can't just take the statement in and of itself. The person's having a mental health episode.
Sure.
They're irate, right? You don't know what they're capable. You've never met them before. If
Sure.
I know you and you ask me to fight, that's a different question.
Well, but I don't know.
Versus I've never met him.
Turns on.
He's got warrants. He may have a freaking murder warrant out.
Sure. Well, but they
They
In
know
order
about
to-
it because it's on the call slip.
well, they know that he said that. They,
Okay.
They hadn't verified it.
I understand, but it's still there and it's still in their mind. Damn, this guy's, there's a crisis here. How do we avert this crisis from happening?
And I
Right?
respect that portion of it, for sure. But from analyzing whether or not there's probable cause to support the elements of this charge, I think that's where our focus really is at.
There's so many like branches to this thing. I can't possibly rule right now.
No, fair enough. And I appreciate that.
And
The-
just from the state's perspective, I know that we wanting a little more information on, I respect that. I think you have, just looking at the totality of the circumstances here, you have a call slip that says someone is, I think what the exact thing was,
Yes, warrants.
rambling and refusing to answer questions. He's advising he has warrants for his arrest and wants someone to pick him up before he does something. States he's waiting outside. He was irate, making threats towards people. They, at the bare minimum, have someone that could be a danger to themselves or others. They go out and I know this is somewhat weird to say, but he approaches them in an aggressive manner with his shirt off saying, come on and fight me. I would argue at the bare minimum, they have the right to detain him. A, to confirm those warrants, because they can't confirm those warrants without actually speaking to him, getting his ID, that kind of thing. B, then there's saying, come on and fight me through a uniform police officer. I know you're not ready. to
There's
rule
just
on
too
it.
much. There's too much.
That's,
Well,
You're incapable of verifying the warrants because of the episode that's happening. So
well, but the actual charge in terms of the elements of this case are that he resisted a search being affected at the end of the fight. And all I saw there with respect to that portion of it was totally conclusory. And so that's where we think the PC falls apart on the element side of just this particular charging issue. And, but I want to again make it abundantly clear that we're not criticizing
Yeah,
the officer
I
whatsoever.
I know you. I get, no one is
It is a
And,
complicated situation.
taking it in any, you know,
But we did think, and that's why the case has gotten to be 180 days old. I think we're at 182 right now, is because I've been trying to find out more and trying to work to get him approved for the mental health PTI, because that kind of
is now
fits.
what happened upstairs going to throw a wrench in it?
Yes, it has currently. They're gonna reapproach felony and see if they'll still allow
Honor
us
it.
to go down that route. But I think it's really the most appropriate route. And I'm not gonna go into that case upstairs, but the allegation in that case, and I think legislature's made that a second-degree felony, if I'm not mistaken, assault of a peace officer. But
Is it?
the allegation is that his thumb,
Second degree.
Wow, the legislature made it a second degree now?
Yes, Judge.
yep. And
Yeah, holy moly.
and I understand.
Wow.
But the allegation upstairs is, and I know there's different components to that whole fact pattern. But the allegation made the basis of the assault is that when they were trying to reposition his handcuffs, his elbow hit the officer's thumb. So it's not,
Oh, I thought here, when they were reading it, they were saying like he was kicking and screaming and kind of
On
like,
the older case, Your Honor, he was. On the newer assault case is whenever they tried to pull or try to put restraints on him, he pulled away and struck the officer's thumb with his elbow. That's for the felony, Your Honor.
it'll be interesting to see if there's body cam to see what the
Yeah.
nature of that
Sure,
pull was,
right.
right?
And-
Because that's ultimately, the case lives and dies on probably that,
but
right?
from my perspective, and I hope that felony is in agreement with this when they learn kind of more about it. And it's a brand new case for them. But when they learn more about it, I hope that everyone agrees that
Sure,
if
I think-
there's mental health issues, then we solve that problem. So this young man isn't back here. And if he gets
We're
resources.
very lucky, my friend. Very lucky. People have died for a lot less. You got to be very careful in today's society. People have, you never know who has a gun. You know what? I have a friend of mine that had a person that was road raging behind him just because he wasn't driving fast enough. The guy comes out, gets a knife and stabs him. Did nothing just because he was driving slow. You never know who you're going to run into these days, man. It just, you run into the wrong person for a lot less, they'll shoot your ass dead. Gotta be careful, man.
And the advice that I've heard you say it in different ways is don't make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. And
Life's just too short, man. You know, you get one crack at it. Once it's gone, it's gone. Just, all right. I'll do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to rule in it yet.
Fair enough. And,
But-
but I do think, also, I was asked to get bond conditions put in place while he's on a new bond. And what I'd like is the same old bond conditions, don't
What do we have now?
commit any new offense, don't consume alcohol or.
Just be good. You know, 99% people lose self-control. That's why they're in jail.
Yes, sir.
No self-control. You got to think, if I do this, what's going to happen? If I say this, what's going to happen? You got maybe a nanosecond to think about it, but that's what it's about. That's what makes you mature. Look at all those freaking old guys in there. Never grew up. Never grew up. And they'll never grow up. Yeah, I'll stick with the same bond conditions. Just no alcohol, no dope. Don't use, man. You know, is he taking any medication now?
No.
Okay, just be careful, man. Self-control. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Just stay in touch. All will be good.
Yeah, it's been great contacting me, Joe.
Okay, I believe it. Okay, Mr. Gomez, good luck.
Thank you as always. Thank you, guys.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know down in the comments whose side you all are on.